Evening, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to the October 15th, 2024 meeting of the Curriculum Subcommittee, and I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. I want to welcome all board members, Dr. Williamson, the administration, members of the public, both in this room and online. My name is Terry Locklear. I'm your representative for District 4. And first, I want to thank Chairman Leach for the opportunity to serve as your curriculum committee chair. And at this time, I'd just like to pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. As our board policy 2230 outlines, the curriculum committee is a standing committee, and as such, 2230 mandates that we thoroughly investigate and deliberate on curriculum-related issues and provide informed recommendations to the full board. This committee serves as an advisory role to the board to assist them in making informed decisions regarding curriculum matters. And just on a personal note, I'd like to share just a few minutes about my educational philosophy and how I'm going to approach this service. I want everyone to know, and mostly I'm sure you're well aware that we serve a rural population with a lot of diversity. And I'm dedicated to embracing our student population by capitalizing on that richness. And we will do this through shared governance. As elected representatives, we are called to ensure that all of our stakeholders have a voice and that we reflect the needs of our community through transparency and accountability. Yes, we do have a unique student population, and many people describe them in various ways, but it's no secret that they face various challenges, but they have options. They have direct access to numerous opportunities right here in our backyard. We have a major university and a thriving community college, and I would like to challenge anyone to find another rural county anywhere in the United States that has the same level of access to educational opportunities that we have right here. But that also means that we are highly visible both at the state level and federal level, and that's fine because we're going to utilize our unique educational ecosystem through partnerships that uplift our community and increase economic mobility, and that's what it's all about. Empowering our students to generate generational wealth. So, curriculum committee, I'm going to challenge you to not consider graduation a final goal. Instead, let's ensure that upon graduation, all of our students are fully prepared for a career, the military, higher education, or whatever life may present. And we will do this while keeping economic mobility at the forefront. We will focus on the long-term health of Robeson County because for most of us, other than Jesus and family, this place we call home is all we have. Thank you all, and I look forward to what we're going to accomplish together. Now, let's go ahead and get to work. Committee members, you have an agenda in front of you, and I want to thank the administration for all of the efforts in putting this together. At this time, do we have a motion to approve or modify the agenda? Hold on a second. Mr. Henry?
Been brought to my attention, I'd like to add some items to the agenda under Dibel's 8 district, add a district level proficiency 23-24. Principals as instructional leaders item, add professional development for teachers. District improvement, add assessment and evaluation plan for 24-25.
Where was that last one going?
The under district improvement, assessment and evaluation for year 24-25.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henry. We'll go ahead and update the agenda to reflect those requests. I don't think we have to have a motion to approve that. So at this time, I'll go ahead and ask Dr. Wendy Dorsey Carr to, under information items, provide a welcome. Oh, I'm sorry.
items added. In all fairness to those here, the superintendent and the staff, can they address those things without being prepared tonight? I mean, do they have the time? Are they ready? Is it fair to them to ask them to respond to this?
I'm not sure how to define fairness because
Well, what I'm saying is, do they have the information ready? And that's a question for the superintendent.
we're not, there's no numerical data associated with these agenda items. It's not going to be how many or anything like that.
Okay, let me ask another question. How is this different from the agenda proposed that we received your agenda? How is this the same item? Are these the same items that were on your initial agenda? I'm asking because I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. So the agenda items that Mr. Brewer added are combined with the existing items that the administration proposed.
Okay, can I give you, and you and I talked, in all fairness, can I give you how I feel about it? Not know how it's going. I think these are a lot of things that could be covered in a more comprehensive setting, i.e., as you and I talked earlier today, in a staff development for board members, i.e., training or a retreat. But this is a lot of information that they could go into and would be here hours if they really let us ask questions about these things. So I'm saying that this agenda, if we add all this, it's too heavy, I think, for a curriculum meeting. I think it would be best suited for training for board members. That is my opinion of all those items added. I think it's too heavy for us to get in tonight. Not that it's not important, and I thank you, Mr. Terry, and whomever, for bringing those items. I think it's something that we need in a setting where we can delve into it and ask questions. I think it's too much for tonight for one agenda. That's just my feelings. It's
Right.
not that it's not important now. And it's not that I don't respect what you've done or whoever did that. It's just that I think it's too much for tonight.
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may, and to Dr. Emmanuel's point, at the November board meeting, it is our intent to try to set some dates for a board retreat that we can do a deep dive into all these issues. And so again, if we can be prepared at the November board meeting to set some dates for that retreat, because you're absolutely right. We can take the time and do a deep dive then.
Mr. Henry, did you have something you wanted to say?
Mr. Chair, I can agree with Dr. Emmanuel and Dr. Williamson. I was thinking that this curriculum meeting was going to be more of a session to get into the dynamics of, we've already been given the status quo on numbers and where we tested out in the system and how we rank with the state. I just like to get into the mechanics of looking at each school. And I think, as we do a retreat, the board can get an opportunity to do that. We've done that before. But I was just thinking I was thinking it was coming too soon. I was thinking that's what this meeting was going to be more of.
Ms. Christie, were you raising your hand? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had something you wanted to say. Okay. Any comments from those online? I want to make sure I want to include everyone in this conversation. Online, we have Ms. Crystal Monroe, Mr. Bradley Phillips, Mr. John Simmons, and Ms. Melissa Ocean.
Hey, I've heard everything. I don't have any comments, but hello.
Mr. Craig?
So I couldn't see. Mr. Chair, I'm just going to ask that the committee members, so the public knows again, that all of us can speak
Absolutely.
But just the committee members are the only ones that do have the right to vote on anything that comes up tonight. And I just asked you if you would identify those, the 5 committee members.
Okay. So online, we have Mr. Bradley Phillips, who's not a member of this committee, but can absolutely speak. We have Ms. Crystal Monroe, who is a member of this committee. Mr. John Simmons is online as well, and he's a member of the committee. And I'm the chair. Dr. Emmanuel is on the committee. Mr. Henry is on the committee, and that's the team that we have today.
And if I could add one other thing, my thoughts on seeing what's here, which is good, and what's here is good. I've just always been a proponent that we don't add things, committee meeting or board meeting, unless it's just an emergency. Again, and my thoughts on doing that, again, I'm not voting is not to add, because people do have a right to me to see what they're going to be asked to talk about. And that's going forward, whether it's this committee or whether it's any committee or whether it's a board meeting. Unless it's something got to be done the next day, let's get it out there so people know what's expected of them.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. And I'm ready to move on without
Okay.
without worrying about adding those items. Mr. Henry, we can go ahead and scratch those and move on with the agenda as proposed by the administration. But I would like to remind you to revisit our policy on subcommittees, and the purpose of a subcommittee is to have is to deliberate and thoroughly discuss items before they're brought to the full board for consideration. And I'm wondering if workshops or retreats are public. And so that would be my only question. So I'm happy to move on and go ahead and move on to our next item, which is the welcome from Dr. Carr.
Good evening, Chairman Locklear, Dr. Williamson, and board members. Tonight, we would like to provide an overview of some of the work that we're doing in the curriculum department. And so we are going to start with Jadelle Hawks speaking on NC College Connect.
Good evening. North Carolina College Connect is a simplified application process for our students, our seniors, to enroll in college. So letters went out in October for 613 in PSRC that they will receive a letter. Qualifications for NC College Connect was a weighted GPA of 2.5 or above. Students were given the information, like I said, this October through mail, and they were selected at the end of their junior year, at the end, which would be their ranking before they go into the 12th grade year. No student can get a letter or access into NC College Connect because it's already been pre-selected for them. So if they did not get a letter, they will not be able to have access to that simplified application, which will help them. It does not cover college application fees, so they're encouraged to do the college application week, which starts next week, for them to be able to cover the fee cost for college applications. The only one on here that of the 6 that are participating for the universities that they will not waive the application fee is the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and then also all community colleges are free regardless. So they'll have a simplified application, and the waiver for admissions has been waived, so it'll be free for them to apply with this College Connect. So 613 of those, if they didn't get a letter, they can go by and see their college, their high school counselor, so they can get that information and get connected onto the portal and accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jadil. And let me just say that on a personal note, I appreciate you coming and presenting this information, given that today may be your last day here before you go to the school. So thank you, and I appreciate everything that you've done at the district level.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So next on the agenda, we have 2324 discussion about personnel data by Mr. Jamal.
Good evening, Chairman, Mr. Terry, and Dr. Williamson, and all our committee members. Right now, I'm presenting to you personnel information. that I'm just going to give you a couple minutes to look over it, but I want to give you some information on that because it's dealing with personnel, some specific information personnel. I will have to collect that information back up from you at the end of the meeting. So once again, once the meeting concludes, I will have to collect that information back from you. And I just want to give you a general overview of what you're looking at, and then I'll let you look more into it. So what you're having here is each school listed here and the number of vacancies in tested areas for that school last school year. So the 2023-2024 school year, you have the actual specific vacancies for each school there listed if it's a tested subject. So for ELA, we know that grades 3 through 8 and English 2 are tested subjects. And so if there's a vacancy there or was there last year, you will see that. I also listed the number of core subject teachers per school for last school year on your document. Also, within that same document, you have our BT1s, BTs 2 and 3, which are listed per school. And remember, BTs are teachers within their first, second, or third year of teaching. Next, you also have the number of residency teachers. These are teachers who are in the actual residency program, which could very well be teachers in their third or fifth year, if not sooner, but they have to actually be in an approved residency program. And the last thing I want to draw your attention to is the teacher absences per school. And that is the percentage that shows you for the school year, the number of subs or usage of subs per school, meaning that at least there was either one or more subs in that school building for that school year. So if you look at one school, we had 28% subs for that school year within that building. That means that there was at least one or more subs in that school per day. Yes.
Question.
I'm not saying that's the average of the percentage dues for the year.
I guess I can't transfer my mind, so help me. Let's say, for example, go down to Fairmont High School, teacher absences, 46%. Now tell me how that transfers to what percentage, like the students' attendance is 88.1%. What is the teacher attendance? How would that 46% for subs transfer to teacher attendance percentage-wise?
So essentially what you're saying, Dr. I mean, and I hope I'm going to answer this the right way for you. That number is showing you that 46% of the school year, there was at least one or more subs within that school's building. And we have some more specific numbers as well, but we couldn't put that because that would really give you more personnel information. But we're saying that at least 46% of the school year, there was at least one or more subs in that school for the year.
You don't have to, can I do a follow-up, Mr.? You don't have to do this, but it would be curious, because it seems like we're comparing apples to oranges. Wouldn't it been easier to tell us what percent like teachers scored, like children 88%, and teachers did they do 76% attendance, or did they do 80%? I know what you're saying that you did. I understand that. But I'm just saying we didn't use the same algorithm to compare them. You see what I'm
I
saying?
got you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No more questions. Thank you.
I'm going to note that when we were originally requested that this agenda item be added for this discussion, my question was, I made a request for a spreadsheet to be listed by school to show the number of teachers that we've hired and the number of teachers that have left that school in the past academic year. It was very simple. So my question is that not possible for us to, for that type of information to be provided?
Yes, sir. I can work on that for you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Mr. Craig?
And let me add the kind of what Dr. May was talking about. We got student attendance and teacher, and we got them in percents. And this is not beating up anybody, but when I go here and see this school, 23% teacher absences, I would like to see that translated into days, if it could be, like for that year. What was the number of absences for teachers at that school? Because again, I think teachers being there is extremely important. And then also, let me add this with the teacher absences. Now, that does not include, and I'm asking this, does that include fourth grade math at a school who has a sub in that room? Is that considered an absence?
So thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Lowry. This number does not include vacancies. This is just Jamal Campbell, who might have been at that school, who called in sick, whatever, or if I was on medical leave. This is what that number shows here.
Teachers only.
Teachers only.
Okay.
So this is not including a vacancy. That's a separate number. Yeah. So this is just teachers who were there all year who might have called in for subs or possibly might have been on medical leave or something to that nature.
So when we see here, Mr. Terry, 23% teacher absences, that was the percent absent for that school for a teacher.
Yes.
Okay, and then I'm gonna say if we look at it later on at some point, I would like to see that translated into days. If that can be done, is okay. If we got 23%, was that 300 days? Was it 500 days? What was it? Because in my mind, when I go to looking at the days, I kind of get a better picture than I do just looking at it as a percent
Yes, sir.
for me. Thank you.
Ms. Christie?
One question I would have, the schools with the higher percentage, is there, is that an indicator that there are high teacher shortages in the classroom?
So you have a very thing with that. Like I said, some schools have higher medical people who are on medical leave. So you saw some of your high schools have the greater number of teacher absences. And so once again, you have more teachers there, so therefore you're probably going to get more absences as well. So you have to count into, was there a lot of teachers out on medical leave? And there could be very well that. Other issues of just behavior, just regular human behavior of missing work and addressing those concerns from that principal as well.
I have a question, Mr. Campbell. What are we doing this year that's different from last year in terms of recruiting and retaining teachers?
So once again, as relates to retaining teachers, we're taking an active approach as relates to our BT program, which we've had it in existence for a while. That's training our new teachers. We have actual monthly meetings, virtual or in person, in which they specialize in specific content area to make sure that they're prepared to provide that ongoing instruction and support in our buildings. One of the things that I'm also doing as the human resource leader is that I'm actually visiting schools and providing observations and support with our beginning teachers and our EPI teachers as well. And so we're taking an active stance on how can we, from the human resource side, support our schools, principals, and teachers in making sure that we retain them so they can really be experts in that classroom. And so that's one of the things that we're really focusing on this year is additional support to our teachers as we're going in to observe and help them along the way. So as a result of those observations, we're coming back and we're going to get with the beginning teachers committee and actually, as they're meeting with them, specialize in some more detailed, specific plans to really address those concerns that we're seeing in those buildings.
Mr. Chair, if I may, And Erica, this may be a question for you, for Dr. Carr. So our teacher bonuses that we pay to recruit teachers in hard to staff areas, can you call those out for us, please?
Good evening, Chairman Locklear, Superintendent Dr. Williamson, and board members. And I may need to get some support here from Mr. Jamal, but I know we have our K-6 is $1,500. Exceptional children is $2,500. And science and math is $1,500. And am I missing any areas? Psychologists are. Okay. And I can bring it up on my computer if you give me just a second, and I'll have that sheet. So one of the things, all those bonuses are going to be paid out at the end of October. We have those from all of our new employees, and this is the final year. At one point, we were doing a graduated schedule on those bonuses when we had more funding available, so they were paid over a 3-year period. This is the last year for that cohort that was in 3 payments, and then for this year, it'll be paid out in 1 payment. We also have the buddy teacher program in place for existing teachers at each school outside of even the academic coaches and other mentors. So it can be a person that's in the same subject area that sits down with that teacher one-on-one and provides support because they're doing the exact same thing every day.
One additional thing, Mr. Terry, we also provide reimbursement for those teachers who are going back to get their certification in teaching. So those who are in those residency programs, they can actually get reimbursed for that. And so that's a program that we have in place for our teachers.
Mr. Craig?
Mr. Campbell, I'm not sure if tonight and Dr. Williamson is this when you do this, but I think we did ask for, have we looked at this if we take school X year and look at what's missing from there from a certified teacher and what was their test scores? If that school was missing a 5th grade language arts teacher all year, what was the test scores at that particular school in that? And if it's coming later tonight, fine. If not, I would ask that that be looked at also, because I think it's important that if we've got certified teacher missing in a testing year in a class half the year or the whole year, that's going to affect those scores. So I'd like to see a correlation between that. And if you don't have it tonight, fine, if that's something that can be worked on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one other question? And Jamal, this is for you. For those teachers and the licensure fee, we pay that as a batch group sometime, and
Yes.
then they reimburse us, because
Yes.
that's a struggle for a lot of those new teachers to be able to pay that fee.
Yes, sir. So with that, with our beginning teachers, those who are coming on, so we have to apply for the license. And so, as you know, most of you have been in education, you know that sometimes your first year you're struggling financially a little bit. So therefore, we as a district will assist them that we just ask them that they answer the 2 questions from DPI for the license, and then we can actually take on the responsibility of paying that, and then we can get reimbursed later on from that as well.
Mr. Campbell, this may or may not be a question for you, but when we look at our personnel data, there's been situations that's kind of raised some flags where we have long-term individuals from this county leaving the district under maybe new or very recent leadership. What sort of, this, like I said, this may not be your question for you, but at what point is a red flag waved to where we say, hey, what's going on at this school over here? Because there's a number of employees leaving that maybe had not planned on leaving for a while. So at what point do we investigate and say, what's going on at this place? Maybe we should look at leadership and really find out why these people are leaving.
So one of them I can say this, I'm in discussion with Dr. Williamson every day, and we have conversations routinely about And he'll ask the questions. Hey, Jamal, do you know why this person's leaving, whatever? And we dive into that work. So when there are red flags, we do address whatever component we need to address. Some people are leaving because, we saw this after COVID around the state. People are trying to find somewhere else to go because they thought maybe something a little bit easier, whatever it may be. And then you have other components where people are leaving. So, but anytime that there are red flags, me and Dr. Williamson, we do have those conversations. We do sit down, and then we do discuss what supports do we need to provide to those schools for whatever capacity as relates to maybe vacancies, whatever. But we do have those conversations, Mr. Terry, regularly.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Any other questions?
Thank
Mr.
you.
Campbell. Appreciate it. Our next agenda item is the Bills 8. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly.
Okay.
Dr. Carr and Dr. Dallas.
Good evening, Chairman Locklear, Dr. Williamson, and board members. This evening, we wanted to share some historical data, and we use Dibbles 8, which it falls under Amplify, as a key source of our data for K2. That's how we monitor our progress. Dibbles 8 is a literacy assessment that students take at the beginning of the year. They just concluded a couple weeks ago, middle of the year, and end of the year. It consists of 6 subtests designed to assess component skills in reading. Dibbles 8 is a risk indicator screener that indicates risk factors for reading. Students can score well below, at, or above benchmark. Students who are at or above benchmark are likely to achieve the expected reading outcomes. Students who score below or well below are considered at risk for potential reading challenges. So this bar graph illustrates the last 3 years of kindergarten Dibbles data. The gray bars reflect state data, and the blue bars reflect the public schools of Robeson County data. For example, on the far left, in 21-22, the beginning of the year data for the state was 26% at or above benchmark. At MOI, they were 47% at or above benchmark, and at EOI, they were 67% at or above benchmark. This compares to the public schools of Robeson County with 10% at or above benchmark at the beginning of the year, 33% at the middle of the year, and 58% at the end of the year. The 22-23 data follows a similar format. The state data at BOI is 28% compared to our BOI data at 10%. It is evident that our public schools of Robeson County kindergarten students are coming in performing lower than the state, and it really underscores the impact of poverty on early literacy skills and the need for universal pre-K. In 22-23, the public schools of Robeson County data went from 10% at beginning of the year to 31% at the middle of the year and 58% at the end of the year. In 23-24, our data went from 13% at the beginning of the year to 30% at the middle of the year to 62% at the end of the year. We've actually started looking at our BOI data from this year, and this year our kindergartners' BOI data is at 16%. For first grade, this graph represents similar. It's comparing the state percentage to our district percentage. So in 21-22, at the beginning of the year, 15% of our first graders were at or above benchmark. In 22-23, our first graders were at 35% at the beginning of the year. And in 23-24, our first grade students beginning of the year percentage was 34. So after looking at our BOI year data for this year, our first grade students BOI is 39%. So although we stay stagnant from BOI to MOI, our PSRC improved to 52% at the end of the year in 22-23 and to 56% in 23-24. As you can see, there is a steady increase from year to year in the percentage of students that are at or above benchmark. And then we'll look at second grade. In 21-22, our second grade students at BOY were at 20%, then 25% at MOY, and 35% at the end of the year. In 22-23, our second grade students were at 30% at the beginning of the year, 33% at MOY, and 39% at EOY. In 23-24, our second grade students started at 34%, moved to 37% at MOY, and ended at 47%. So once again, we are starting to see that our students are entering the next grade level at a higher level. So we're moving from 20% to 30% to 34% at the beginning of the year. Our new data from this year is our second grade students BOY is actually at 41% this year. So we're starting to see students enter at a higher readiness level. There's also a steady increase from year to year. This last slide just basically shows you our beginning of the year data over the last 4 years. So right now in this current school year, we only have BOY data. But if you look at kindergarten, you can see over the last 4 years, when our kindergarten students come to us and we assess them in the first 20 days, that's where they're coming at as far as a readiness level. So we are at 10%, 10%, 13 to 16%. Our first graders, when they entered, looking at 4 years, we're going from 15 to 34, 34 to 39% this year. In our second grade students, once again, you can see the progression, and our current second grade students BOY is sitting at 41%. So once again, we're starting to see that readiness level increase, which should allow our students to be able to engage in those grade level activities and curriculum so that we can close that gap and make sure that our students continue to move forward. So any questions on that DIBELS 8 data? Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Emmanuel?
I want to go back to the kindergarten data. What percentage of students do we have that come into us at kindergarten that have had no preschool, no daycare? Do you have any idea?
We know our preschool data. So when Jamie Flanagan, we look at that, we have about 400 students that are in NC pre-K or Title I pre-K.
Yeah.
As far as daycare, Dr. Emmanuel, I don't have those numbers to know what type of daycare they've come out of, whether it was a home daycare or a facility.
Well, I'm not so much interested in daycare. In other words, what percent of children come to kindergarten with absolutely no type, they've just been at home?
Yeah.
And that makes a difference, the experience they come to school with in kindergarten. I guess that's what I'm concerned that the children we're not reaching with any preschool.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious if there's any kind of data out there.
We could look at like I said, the NC pre-K, Title I pre-K, and take that number against the denominator of kindergartners now
That
and
would
see
be
what that.
interesting to know because it makes a difference.
Oh,
they're coming
absolutely.
here.
Absolutely. They come in at a different readiness level.
And may I do a follow-up question, Ms. Terry? Okay, the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year. What do teachers do? Like I'm at the beginning of the year, I understand that ground zero and what they would do. I get my data at the beginning of the year and I see what I need to do. Okay, I go to the middle of the year and I test those children. What do I do? What strategies do you think they do when they see those individual children not cutting it?
Right.
How do they adjust their teaching, or do they adjust? What happens?
So actually, I'm going to back up and say that we've gotten better at, we don't wait for our BOY data. We have data on most of our students from the end of last year. So the push this year was do not wait for beginning of the year data. We have data that indicates what sub-skill students are lacking, right, or need support in. So let's get started right away during intervention blocks, during small group, and let's start addressing those gaps right away. So once we get our BOY data, what teachers are doing right now is they take that data and they have to look at all the sub-skills. So there's 6 different sub-skills. They determine the highest leverage skill, that skill that I really need to conquer before I can move on to the different skills. They develop their IRP, which is their reading plan, and they start grouping kids either during intervention. If I have an interventionist, a YDS, I might have small group tutoring going on. It looks different at different schools based on just some of the resources or how I structure my day. But they start trying to add supplemental time to that student to help close that gap. And that's something they have to monitor. We look at what skill they've done, how they're intervening, they document their intervention, and then they have to progress monitor through DIBELS to see how they're performing on that subtest.
And it's important to note that they're not under the EO curriculum, so they can do this with grouping
Absolutely.
and so forth.
We use a lot of the Florida Research Center. We use Amplify materials. There's a lot of different phonics, phonemic awareness, really depending on what the skill is we try to make sure that the resource matches the skill. I think I said last week, we don't like to cast just a net out around reading. I want to know what the issue is so I can address that with a strategy.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Ms. Christie?
What are we doing as a district to ensure that every K-2 class has a TA to assist with preparing our students with reading proficiency? Because that tends to be a key piece
Right.
in the classroom.
And I'll be honest, not every K-2 classroom has a teacher assistant, right? That is not typical in every one of our schools. A lot of times it's kindergarten. That's the one that's required for 50%. Beyond that, it's not actually required. So a lot of our schools might combine first grade. They might do some sharing. So that looks slightly different, but that's where sometimes an interventionist. A lot of our schools use their elective teachers as well. So if I'm an art teacher, like I have a school, the media specialist was a teacher, we utilize her to pull small groups. So really they're trying to be very intentional about the staff they have on their campus to utilize them. It's not always a teacher assistant.
And how are you monitoring that?
We actually, when we're in and out of classrooms, when we meet with principals, we look to see what personnel they have. And a lot of the principals we worked with, how can we create more learning time for students? The YDS, like I said, they can do like 2 hours a day for tutoring. They have a plan to see how they can pull. So it's really, it can be kind of dynamic and it looks slightly different, but we're trying to maximize kids that are struggling to get them in front of a person to give them extra support.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr.
Okay,
Dallas.
thank you.
Ms. Monroe, I'm sorry, Ms. Monroe's online and she had her hand up.
Hey, I guess this kind of circles around what Miss Christie said, but I was just trying to figure out, as with the K2, with the reading, as far as making sure that, like, for example, last year, some of the first grade teachers, because they had a substitute one, you have one teacher trying to teach 2 classes, and with, 60 students or less or more, they kind of fall through, I would say, how do I word it? Like some of the kids, like not, some kids may get slipped under and not be recognized as needing more help. When you have 60 students and they're trying to keep up with one teacher trying to keep up, how can we fix that and help the teachers in the classroom that are dealing with that right now? Because I know that's happening now as well. So what could, like, as far as having a like a TA or somebody to help, recognize this and help them, so
Yeah.
they're not overwhelmed, and then each kid is getting, the needs they met.
Right. So I would say one of the things we do is capitalize on our staffing. So once again, if we have to consolidate or we want to make sure that a student gets a 45-minute reading block with a certified teacher, they also would have a sub that would be in place. So a lot of times they would be in the classroom together. The other thing we really try to push is this idea of schedule flex, making sure that when I look at my daily instructional schedule, if I can work in blocks of time where I can pull in additional support. We've had schools where sometimes even a second grade teacher might push down to a first grade classroom, or a fourth grade teacher might push down to a classroom 2 days a week. So it's hard to say how it looks in every scenario because we really try to problem solve that situation in every school and utilize the personnel that we do have. And we look very strategically at a schedule to see how we can move times around to maximize, because we do want every child to have time in front of a certified teacher.
Mr. Britt?
Refresh my memory. I can't remember exactly. Didn't we hire some people at one time? Some of them are retired teachers. I don't want to say
So
they were used as TAs, but I can't remember.
Interventionists. Yep.
Interventionists. There we go. I knew we had hired a whole
Yep.
bunch at one time.
And we do, some schools
Okay.
utilize Title I dollars for an interventionist. Some use them as tutors. They might hire a tutor. Like I said, it looks very different. Some use elective teachers to push in and give 45 minutes of small group instruction. So it's really about maximizing the personnel that you have on your staff, know their strengths, and utilize them.
Mr. Chair, if I may. And so out of our 69 tutoring money, it was reduced by $1 million. So talk about tutoring intervention during the day, because that's what we're being forced to
Right.
do.
And because of that, we really have had to be very creative with our schedules, looking to see how, like I said before, how we can build in blocks of time. Intervention is usually a 40, 35-minute block. That's always a key time. It might be, how do I move blocks of time where I split a subject up into two, and half of that time I'm getting some intervention, the other time I'm getting content. So it's best to get the kids while they're there. We know that during the day when they're in our schools, that we can intervene as fast as we can. And usually they're there, which is great. We need them to be there. After school, sometimes attendance was not always there. It was hard for teachers, but it is really all about scheduling and using your master schedule to your benefit and making sure that you can find blocks of time.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Dowlis.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to call Dr. Darlene Cummings and Dr. Jill Hathaway to the podium to discuss Apex Edmentum Intervention and Support.
Good afternoon, Chairman Locklear, Dr. Williamson, and our board members. Thank you for allowing us to come tonight to share with you a few minutes about the how and the why we use Edmentum in the public schools of Robeson County. We have 3 overarching goals for Edmentum in the public schools. With Edmentum, we have Apex Learning, we have Apex Courses, and we have Courseware, which are 2 separate platforms. But our overarching goals are these: to create a pathway for students to earn multiple high school credits in conjunction with a regular schedule, to ensure college and career readiness by offering a rigorous curriculum for students, and to ensure teachers are knowledgeable about best practices for online learning, to ensure every student learns the skills and concepts needed to meet grade level proficiencies. Those are the 3 goals for Edmentum in the public schools. And Dr. Hathaway will talk about Apex Courses and tutorials, and I'll end with Courseware.
Okay. Yes. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us here tonight. I began looking at the section entitled Apex Courses. Okay, so this section here talks about some of the components that you will find, the students find, the teachers find when they access Apex Courses. First of all, Apex Courses comes complete, or it has a complete course of study with credit-bearing courses in high school, okay? And it uses formative and summative assessments. And also, there is a grade book in courses so the teachers can monitor the student progress. Monitoring any course online, any digital course like that, monitoring is a very important key. Apex Courses allow us to go in and tailor the course for various implementation models. For example, it's very flexible. Teachers can use it whole group, small group, can use it during centers, rotation time, before, during school tutoring, after school tutoring. It allows itself to different genres in education. One of the strongest components is the real-time data that is the teachers are able to see, but also the district level is able to see. And then the more you do your dives, you go straight down to the student data, all the way from the district data to the teacher data school data, and it's real-time data, very nice, and color-coded and so forth. The APEX courses is aligned to grade level standards, and it is a rigorous program. It is not a program that when the students enroll, that they get something for nothing. They are expected to work, and it does require a lot, but that's what we want for our students. And but it also helps to keep the teachers on task too. And it has way it's set up. It has teachers to be involved in the monitoring part of it. It's not just a program that students get in, do whatever they want to, and then in the semester get a grade. It's not set up like that at all. The resources that are available to all students in the program include text-to-speech and also translations. There's over 100 different languages that in there for translations. So that's APEX courses. Now, APEX courses is used for those classrooms with subs and so forth in them. But APEX tutorials is another part. And this is the part that teachers use during intervention, during tutoring times. They use APEX tutorials to fill the gaps. You know, students don't all come to us the same way. They are in different levels and so forth. So it lends itself very nicely to fill in those educational gaps for differentiation. And students start off in APEX tutorials with a prescriptive pretest. And then when they go through the 4 steps of APEX tutorials, there is a post-test at the end, and then from the pre-test to the post-test, they measure the gains. And the 4 steps include when students click into APEX tutorials, they go through this Learn It section, and that's the big green section there. It's the biggest part because that's where they want students to spend more of their time, and the slides are very interactive. And then they go through a Try It section, a Review It section, and then they go through the Test It section. It does have core grade level content, and it does have supporting topics, and it adjusts itself when the students take the pre-test and they don't score very well and they need more supporting topics, it automatically will adjust. So the same 2 students won't be working on the same thing the same ways because it is designed to adjust to the various needs of the students. And also the resources available also include text-to-speech and translations, which is a big part of testing. So that's available. Any questions about that slide? No. Okay, the next slide. Now, this slide
Hold
here.
on one second, Dr. Hathaway.
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Creek had a question.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Hathaway or Dr. Cummings, let's take tomorrow. In our school system,
Yes.
how would the APEX courses or the tutorials be used and where at?
That's what we're going to tell
gonna tell me now?
right now.
Okay,
This is
okay.
it. Yes,
All right.
absolutely. So APEX learning. Okay, you go into the schools tomorrow. This is the way APEX courses is implemented. It is used for credit recovery, and we also use it for summer school at every high school. And Darlene and I were a part of that. And it's also used for curriculum resource for the long-term subs at the middle and high schools from grades 6 through 12. Okay, this is a 6th through 12th grade program for those subs. And Darlene and I are part of that training process. We go in there and we work and we train those subs and so forth. Because it is North Carolina Standard Line, it is rigorous, but if the sub doesn't know how to work it, it's not going to do us any good. So we go in there and we train them. And then it is used for acceleration and enrichment at LAP. That is the standard course of study at LAP. And let me tell you, when we first got there and we were doing it, the resistance level was high at first. They love it. The data rich, and they understand and know so much more about the students. And what I love most about it the program, the way it's built and designed, it forces the teachers to have to monitor. But not only that, it's transparent. Every month we send daily, monthly report to the superintendent, to the curriculum assistant principals and curriculum staff and so forth, and to the principals themselves, because the data is used to, it's rich and it's used to be utilized and help target those needs areas.
And the one great thing about the data is that you don't have to go looking for it. When
No.
a teacher logs in and a student logs in, the first thing they see on their dashboard is data.
Yes.
And then from there, it's how deep do you really want to go with it?
Drill
If you
down.
wanted a bird's eye view of what your students done yesterday afternoon, it's there. You don't have to go looking for it. So that's one of the great things about with Apex is the data is there and it's easy to find and easy to drill down.
Yes.
Data, and that's important.
And we want it to be, we are constantly training and working with the site coordinators. We go out to the schools. We will do PLCs with the teachers. We want them to know this program because we know once they utilize it, they love it. This summer, we were implementing it in that last one, PSRC online, which was always Moodle, you know. And of course, when you're doing something new, you're going to meet resistance. Well, we work with them, and now they are, and we told them, said, you're going to learn so much more about your students because it's going to be right. It's going to keep them honest. It's going to keep everybody honest when they tell you, oh, I was in there doing this. Oh, no. The data shows you how long you've been in there, when you clicked off. It records everything that you're doing. And that's what we need because students are so technology savvy. We train our teachers and our substitutes how to be technology savvy too. It's important. And yeah,
It's important in all aspects.
right.
And with these programs, it is very transparent.
And
Not only for the students, but for the parents and for the teachers.
that's right. Yeah, we opened the parents' eyes to it as well too. But
Mr. Chair, if I may,
mhm.
and this is for Jill or Darlene. So with Apex, it's not 100%. We still require some face-to-face. Will you talk about that and what percent, please?
Okay, so when we talk about Apex and you talk about courses at lab, we do have the face-to-face.
Mhm. Yeah, go ahead.
The teachers there at lab are the facilitators. They do the face-to-face instruction. With the tutorials at the school, the name tutorials can be very misleading. It is called Apex Tutorials, but actually the tutorials are used as bell warmers. They're used as an introduction to a new unit, a new topic. They are used to determine prior knowledge for students. For example, Jill was talking about the learn it, the try it, the test it, which is the gradual release of responsibility. But if a teacher is introducing a new topic, a new unit in her classroom, they can go in there with a tutorial, go through the learn it, the try it, and know what the student's background knowledge is on that topic before they ever go in and start teaching. So it gives them that bird's eye view for that. So there are the face-to-face, and as far as the percentages, Dr. Williamson, I don't have that with me, but know that it is not only about being in front of a computer and working your way. And even though this is a self-paced product, it does require intervention from an adult, especially with the PSRC online and especially for our students at lab. It does require that face-to-face and that intervention.
And that monitoring and teachers having the crucial conversations with them, you know, by looking at your data, this is what the data is saying. And when students click on, they automatically see their data. But right now in tutorials, there are 6,008 students enrolled in tutorials, okay? And then in courses, there's 1,900 students enrolled in courses, okay? And so we looked at the report. In fact, Darlene and I were looking at a report earlier today in Apex, and it showed that they broke it down to the students who were scoring really high. And you got those students that score really high and the students that score really low. And we have more students passing, scoring above around the 60% than we do with the students below that number.
Dr. Hathaway, I think Mr. Craig has a question.
Yes.
Question on second bullet where it's got curriculum resource, long-term subs at middle and high school. Okay, sixth grade teacher, English, had a sub there all year long. Are they using Apex courses or are they using the NL curriculum we got or tutorials or combination? What are they doing?
They do not use the courses in Apex. They are required to use the district curriculum.
Okay.
However, tutorials line up with the standards. They can use tutorials as a resource for the curriculum. They can use it, but only as a resource for the curriculum. They are to use the EL curriculum.
And as a follow-up, if this is the long-term sub now, are they getting some training from you folks on how to do it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But also, when it comes to Apex, which we hadn't got to that side over there yet, Apex tutorials is used when you go into a classroom, you will see them using Apex tutorials for intervention and in conjunction with classworks. And so it is used during that intervention time. And that's for middle school and high school. So we have been training the English teachers, the math teachers, how to implement Apex tutorials during intervention time. So in that essence, it is the English teacher and math teacher does utilize that. We have been training them on that.
But the Apex courses will only be used for your non-EOG courses.
Right. And we also utilize Apex tutorials for helping prepare students for the ACT, the EOG, and the EOC.
We got a question from Ms. Christie.
So if long-term subs can use the tutorials, would it not be said that it may be a good resource for our teachers?
And
Yes.
we train all the teachers on how to use the tutorials. That is a resource for every teacher in the county. We train them to do it. We go out to the classrooms, we do PLCs, but they do get trained on how to use Apex tutorials as a resource to help reinforce the skills that students need. We definitely do that.
In fact, we just finished up that training 2 weeks ago. We had 3 different training sessions for high school, 3 different training sessions for AC tutorials for high school, and 3 different training sessions for 6 through 8. Just finished it up.
Dr. Cummings, I'm not sure if this is a question for you or even Dr. Hathaway, but what role does curriculum supervisors have in vetting the content in Apex?
They have a huge role. The curriculum supervisors are instrumental in making sure that the Apex courses are aligned, making sure that the standards are covered fully. They have gone in there and modified, they have taken out and added. So we rely on our curriculum department for that guidance.
Yeah.
So they are invested in Apex and they help to work with us to making sure that we, as far as Apex, is doing what we need to do to make sure that the curriculum is aligned and with the standards and with the pacing. And I'll be talking about courseware in just a second or two, but with their help, we are able to take a student at the middle school that transitions into RAS and place them exactly where they need to be based on the pacing so that they don't lose ground when they go back and enter into the regular school. But they are instrumental in helping us with that.
And the curriculum people, we start with them. We start looking at what changes need to be made in Apex at the end of this school year, around I think it's May. And then they work with Dr. Rice during the summer, who is the representative, with their changes and so forth. And then she gives them a deadline in August to have all the changes and so forth made.
We've made a lot of changes in science within Apex that wasn't there. Ms. Susan went in there and added a lot of
She did.
content, as well as Ms. Mansfield.
Yes. Things that she felt like that they need to be exposed to. She went in and added stuff that she felt like these students just needed, and it was put in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next, we're going to talk about courseware. Courseware is used at RAS, or alternative school, for middle school 6 through 8. Any student in grades 6 through 8 who have been referred to the RAS program will get their instruction through courseware, which is part of Adminum. Courseware courses have been customized. They have been vetted by our curriculum department. Students will return back to their school on a certain date without missing any content, because we do pace where they start and where they end. But so we do use courseware for RAS students at the alternative program. Right now, we have 20 active students enrolled in a course in courseware. Work Keys is in courseware. Work Keys has been in the district for 2 years. This year, all high school seniors will be enrolled in a Work Keys course. You have your applied mathematics, you have your graphic literacy, and you have your workplace documents. Dr. Williamson made it perfectly clear that he wanted support for our students so that they could be more successful when it comes to the Work Keys assessment. Any student in a CTE level 1 will take the workplace documents course. A student enrolled in a CTE level 2 will take the graphic literacy course. Students enrolled in EPF, Economics and Personal Finance, will take the Applied Mathematics course. It is a requirement that these students have at least 45 minutes a week in these courses. When the students are allowed to log into the course, is really up to the teacher, up to the school. We've been out, some do it 15 minutes, they do it bell work. Some at the end of the day on Friday, they give them 20 minutes on Friday. So it's really up to the individual school, the individual teachers, as to when they find the 45 minutes for the students to be able to log in to the Work Keys. The resources that are available through courseware is the same as through tutorials and Apex. They have the text-to-speech and they have the translations. And the great things about these resources for our students is they all go through an orientation, and it's not something a teacher has to cut on for a student to access. It's there, it's on their dashboard. Every student, it doesn't matter if you're EL, EC, regular student, honors, it doesn't matter. You have access to the same resources. So every student that logs in to anything in Adminum has these access to these resources. They don't have to be turned on. It's automatically there for our students. And we actually have 2,230 students enrolled in Work Keys as of today.
Yeah, the last school that we trained was the Career Center. And we've been monitoring their data, and they have been doing so good.
We have a question from Dr. Emanuel.
Thank you. Ladies, I don't know how you've done it, but you found the fountain of youth. You really have, both of you. I do want to have to back up and probably eat some words I said. At the beginning of the year, when the Apex was moved to RAS and Lab, I got numerous calls. They were disgruntled, especially when you took Moodle out. Oh, my goodness. But I have to say that they have come around and they've
Yes, they
accepted
have.
it, received no calls, no people are going to quit and all this.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, 1 or 2 have come back to tutor. So I congratulate the whole district for going with the Apex program, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And
Thank
we
you.
won them over, but
We did.
the platform for admin is really friendly
It is.
for the students, for a parent, for a teacher. It's very friendly.
And the data, that when I tell you they know so much more about their students because of it is so true. And it forces the teacher to monitor. Some of the teachers like, I have to unlock this, I have to unlock, but because they have to unlock it, they have to look at that test.
Forces them to
And it forces them to look at that test and have the crucial conversation. Where did they go wrong? Let's have you to go back. Where if it didn't do that, they just keep right on breezing through there and not being monitored. It has really good components.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, they're not going to tell you, but you're looking at the leaders across the state for Apex. In fact, the company used them to train other districts, other teachers. They're not going to tell you that. Absolutely, right, sir? Absolutely. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We
Thank
have
you.
one more slide that we want to share with you, and these are pictures of groups of students. We started the ACT challenge year before last, 22. And what we did was the school with the highest points gained received a trophy. The teacher with the highest points gained from her students received a gift. The students in all three areas, applied math, graphic literacy, workplace documents, the student with the highest growth in those three areas received a swag bag and a gift card. Last year was the first year we did it for EOG, for our middle school students. And so they received the trophy. And it was Union Chapel received the trophy, and the students received their gifts and prizes. Last year was Lumberton Senior High. The year for that was Red Springs High. But we started these challenges to get the students, the teachers motivated
To utilize
get the
it.
students motivated to get in there and work through those courses.
Yes, and they love the recognition. And it's a win-win situation because the school gets recognized, the teachers get recognized for their hard work, and the most important thing, the students. And so they look forward to it. In fact, they've even asked us, are you going to do the ACT challenge? Or are you going to do the EOG challenge? And it gets them looking at their data, which is good.
Any other
Thank you.
questions? Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Next on the agenda, we have a discussion about our new science standards by Susan Miller Hendricks.
Good evening, Chairman Locklear, Dr. Williamson, and board members. They asked me to speak tonight about the new science standards and support that's being offered to our science teachers. See if I can operate this. Whoops. So we know that the State Board of Education adopted new science standards in July of 2023, with those being implemented in August of 2024. If you look at that symbol, it is probably familiar to some of you. That is the symbol from the Next Generation Science Standards. Even though the state of North Carolina did not adopt Next Generation, they modeled their standards very closely to the Next Generation Science with these three dimensions. The practices, and we will talk about that a little bit more, describe the behaviors that they expect scientists and engineers to engage in. The disciplinary core ideas, this is your content. And then we have cross-cutting concepts, which describe how the three domains of science are connected along with other disciplines such as math, ELA, and social studies. So these science and engineering practices, these are embedded in each and every objective in the new science standards. And these are things that the students are expected to be doing. So they are something from asking questions, developing and using models. And when they start talking about models, they don't necessarily mean three-dimensional. These can be graphs, these can be charts, these can be drawings, these can be images. They need to plan and carry out investigations, not cookie cutter labs, but instead that's where the students are coming up with ways to test a phenomena, analyze and interpret data, use mathematics and computational thinking, construct explanations, engage in argument from evidence. This is where when you go into a science class, students should not be sitting in single rows, but students should be discussing science. They should have science discourse. and then obtain, evaluate, and communicate information. The cross-cutting concepts are things that connect, like I said, the three domains to science, things like patterns, cause and effect, energy and matter, stability and change. And then we have our disciplinary core ideas. And when you hear science teachers talk, they will say, well, the standards didn't change that much. The standards themselves did not. Content is content. Weather is weather. But what changed was those science and engineering practices. Our disciplinary core ideas are broken into three domains. We have life science, physical science, and earth and space science. Within each of these domains, there are strands. There are 4 strands for life science, 4 strands for physical science, and 3 strands for earth and space science. Now, while K-8 will have all 3 domains, K-8 does not necessarily have all of the strands each and every year. So if you wait until 4th grade to teach science because 5th grade will be tested, that student enters 5th grade with only 25% of the background knowledge they need to start that 5th grade year. So it is important that each grade level teaches the science standards to provide the background that those students need. So we're going to look at one of these standards, and I like to call it a performance objective. And it's simply because, again, the students should be doing something. This is a physical science domain. It's a 7th grade standard. It's standard 1, objective 2. Use models to illustrate the effects of balanced and unbalanced forces acting on an object to include friction, gravity, and magnetism. So the students should be using a model that then can explain the concept of balanced and unbalanced forces. So as we look at some of the assessment questions, you will see why those science and engineering practices are so important. So here is a 5th grade science EOG type question. DPI for the last couple years has been adding in some of these new type questions, some of them being field tested. With last year was the first year that they had choose more than one correct answer choice as a question that would be counting. And what they said was it was an all or nothing. So if a student got part of the more than one answer correct, they did not get any credit. They had to get both parts in order for it to count. So in this one, it's using a model. The image is a model looking at the connection of ecosystems between aquatic and terrestrial. And then it asks them to pick which 2 claims about consumers are supported by that model. So again, they have to know what a consumer is. They have to be able to identify the flow of energy in order to pick out the 2 correct answers in that question. It is no more mark off couple that you know are not right and then guess between the other 2. They have to know the content now. The next one is in 8th grade. And as you can see, this is also dealing with ecosystems, which is a big part of 5th grade, 8th grade, and biology. Now our ecosystem is a little bit more in depth. They're looking at not only the organisms that are involved, but now they're talking about the cycling of matter. So the students are looking at this and they have to know what's happening to the carbon in that ecosystem, not just the animals, but now we're having to trace the carbon through the carbon cycle that's happening. Again, more in-depth understanding. And then now we've got biology. Again, same premise, but now we've got a much more in-depth ecosystem here, food chain, food web. We're talking about the energy transfer between trophic levels. And now they have to pick out 3 answer choices. So again, it is all or nothing. They may get 2 correct and 1 not correct, but they will not get any credit if they cannot identify all 3 of those answer choices. So support in professional development has been ongoing. It has actually started for the last couple of years with modeling of STEM lessons, which is our science and engineering practices for teachers. But from July 29th to August 2nd, I partnered with DPI and NC Science House to bring the modeling pedagogy to our biology teachers in our district. They were trained for a week in July. August 15th, our ATSI schools were trained with 5th and 8th grade science. August 20th and 21st, every 5th grade teacher, 8th grade teacher in the district were trained on the new science and engineering practices and the new standards, along with a representative from each school and the academic coach. August 23rd, biology has had follow-ups with Benita Tipton from DPI. September 12th, the Sandhills Region Educational Consortium has been creating office hours on the science and engineering practices. We held our first one in September. And then we have been holding monthly PLCs with 5th and 8th grade teachers coming here to give them the opportunity to plan with each other. A lot of our 5th grade teachers and 8th grade teachers may be the only one at their school teaching that grade level. And so by bringing them together, they get to share ideas and plan more rich lessons together. This is just for September, and here is our professional development that is coming up in October. October 2nd, we took a group of 5th and 8th grade selected teachers to CSTEM at Watson School of Education at UNCW, where they were trained by the Center for Inquiry-Based Learning on these inquiry-based kits that they will be receiving to use in their lessons in their classrooms. And again, modeling training took place last Friday and Saturday, and will take place again next Thursday and Friday, with the final training for modeling coming up March 24th and 25th. So again, we've provided a lot of support for our teachers and a lot of support to help them with implementation of these new standards. And this is just some images from some of the professional development that's been held. And as you can see, the science teachers are not just sitting there taking notes in a notebook. They are actually expected to go through the different experimentations themselves, just as if they were the students, so that they know how to then take that back to their classrooms. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may, again, we're just so honored to be able to say that Susan was selected, one of 2 teachers, to unpack the new standards for the Sandhill region. So we've been doing outstanding work with that. And then also, Susan, talk briefly about NCAT, because they're involved with some of this work with us, correct?
Once we saw that we really were going to have to really be there to support these teachers with these science and engineering practices, because that is what's new, the Sandhills region reached out to NCAT to help us support them. So each month when we get on these monthly office hours, myself, Amber Hutchins from Hope County, and Jen Redfern from NCAT in Cullowhee, we meet together, we plan, and then we carry out this professional development for our teachers. And we are also in contact with possibly bringing NCAT down here to do some training with our teachers within our region as well.
Mr. Craig?
Ms. Susan, let me ask this we test 5th grade and made the comment, we got a new curriculum, but they can't wait till the 5th grade to do the teaching or we're in trouble. What are we doing countywide as far as, I'm a 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade teacher. I don't have time to teach science. I got to worry about, this has been going on for 20 years. I got to worry about my English, my math. So what are we doing to get those teachers where they're doing some help with that? And then I'm gonna go back to the 6th and 7th grade teachers doing something with the 8th, helping the 8th grade. Because like I said, you can't wait till that year. It's too late.
No, you can't. And that was the good thing when the Sandhills region come to develop their resources, and they are attached to that slide. They pulled in kindergarten through 12th grade teachers to develop these resources. So for kindergarten through 3rd grade, these are very short, very quick lessons that can be done in 10 or 15 minutes, but they are hitting those standards and those science and engineering practices. We know that the science content, a lot of it is already embedded in that EL curriculum. So if we have our teachers practicing those practices, then they are already helping those students out. 6th and 7th grade, I meet with those regularly, helping them with identifying lessons, helping them with these science and engineering practices. And of course, the STEM lessons that I've been doing for the past several years are hitting those standards as well with those teachers, so that those teachers can see how they can use plain, simple objects and
Mhm.
meet those standards, meet the needs of those standards.
And I've seen what you've done in science the last few years, so you're going to help break this trend of when we get a new test statewide, a new test, the scores usually in that area, they go down. And you're going to help break that trend this year.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been saying, biology is going to rock it this
Mhm.
year. If you
Okay.
have been in any of the modeling classes, please go by, check it out. I was at Purnell yesterday. They were dissecting fetal pigs, grasshoppers, earthworms, and frogs. When
Good.
I first walked there, all the students were squeamish and said, I'm not touching it. By
Right.
the end of the class, they were all involved looking at that sample. So we're going to rock science this year.
Right.
Mr.
Thank
Chair, if I may, Craig has his principal hat on tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, we started that conversation about 2 years ago, Mr. Craig, that we could not take that dip in science.
Mhm.
And so that's been an ongoing conversation.
And science has helped us greatly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other questions? I have a couple. If you don't mind discussing how principals or if principals, assistant principals, academic coaches, have they been involved in the training? And also what are our plans for monitoring the instruction and implementation of these standards moving forward?
Academic coaches were trained this summer. Principals have been briefed at different principal meetings on the new standards. They have been a part of all the discussions for the last couple years as we know these standards were rolling out. Principals were part of the stakeholders' feedback that the state put out as they were developing these standards. And as far as ongoing support, my support is to try to keep funding coming in to provide the supplies that the teachers are going to need as they go forth. Because with science being hands-on, there are going to be things that they are going to need in a budget that maybe that hasn't been in a budget before. So that is going to be my role in helping piece together those ends to make sure they have what they need.
Thank you so much. Ms. Susan?
And we did purchase for 5th and 8th, when I mentioned the Center for Inquiry-Based Learning, those kits will be coming in for 5th and 8th grade teachers that are aligned to their standards for them to be doing that hands-on.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have curriculum alignment to applied methodology. This is Dr. Carr and Dr. Dallas.
So good evening again. So we just want to quickly talk about how all this aligns to the applied methods. When we think about science, everything's applied. All of the standards that we have put in place now in the state are applied. And so what we're just going to quickly talk about is how Eureka, and the social studies standards are also all about the applied methodology, using everything in applied format. So if we look at Education, it really talks about integrating literacy skills and building real world knowledge. So we're talking about using authentic text, doing performance tasks at the end of a unit where students get an opportunity to work on real world situations to develop what's going on. And so what they really do is talk about rich culturally inclusive texts and topics to help them work through learning those literacy skills. If we think about Eureka, it is very similar. It is very about conceptual understanding and procedural fluency. So what we're talking about is students, once again, having that opportunity to apply real world math and thinking about those concepts that they see in science in those classrooms. I was just today in a school, and this was actually part of the discussion, is the math that they're doing there is part of what they're seeing in science class. So that 5th grade team was collaborating and talking about how much that applied piece happens in both classes. And so they were just talking about those pieces and knowing how I have to use a thermometer and how I have to measure and what that means. So they're using it everywhere, and that talks about using those models to support our understanding so that really have a real life application and can problem solve those types of tasks. When we think about social studies, we are also using the Sandhills materials that were developed as a team from the Sandhills region. And so the social studies standards also are all about application. And the main focus is really about inquiry. So looking and solving real world problems and making their own decisions based on all the different information they collect. So they research different things and determine what's going on. It integrates a lot of different disciplines so that they can look at various lenses and make their decisions on what their beliefs are about things that happen in the world. So, and that's where they really talk about that real world application. So applying it to things that they do in everyday life and thinking about how these things, patterns in historical knowledge all connects. And so what they're really doing is developing conceptual understanding and the skills necessary to apply everything in all subject areas. So that's just kind of giving an overview how all of the curriculums really show those connections as far as application and being able to apply it across the curriculum. Any questions about that?
Ms. Christie?
So you did go into a school today that was successful. How are these academic coaches working together across the district and sharing ideas so that the whole district is successful? How are we doing that?
So we have monthly coaches meetings where they come together and they collaborate on a lot of different things. So just Friday, I have to remember when we had our last meeting. Friday, we did a whole meeting on Eureka Math, and the coaches got together in teams working on certain grade levels to develop understanding and common understanding of how to help support that math in that grade level. And so they worked on lesson planning and those different types of things. So we have different opportunities every month where they come to work on different things together.
So how are you following up with that in the schools, in each school, to make sure the academic coaches in every school are doing that so that every school is on board?
So we do multiple ways of collecting information. First of all, of course, observations when we go in a classroom. So each of us does go into the classrooms on a regular basis and observe what the academic coaches are doing. But then also we have a Canvas course. So what we do require is in the Canvas course, they actually record themselves doing a planning meeting. They record themselves doing a data meeting and an ops feedback session with different teachers. So they submit those videos so that we can give consistent feedback and look at what their areas of growth are. We also, every time we have training, we set a deadline for when they have to implement that training, and they submit that documentation through that Canvas course. In addition, we have them weekly submit the work that they're doing to show us how they're progressing with certain groups. And as an entire instructional leadership team, they look at what actions they're working on, and the principal submits the notes for that to show the work that they're doing as a team. So we have a lot of different ways that we collect the data to look at what's happening in those schools with those academic coaches.
Mr. Craig?
Okay, this has been asked before, and Dr. Williamson, I was making sure you come back in. Because we need a clear, to me, it's still not clear after, I'm gonna say 2 years. We got Eureka and we got NL. Teacher's supposed to follow that. You can't use nothing else. You can use nothing else. That translation has not been clear from teachers using something else. Somebody goes in, it might be y'all, it might have been somebody else. Then now this is what's come down to me, then it comes down to principal. They end up going and saying, well, you weren't supposed to use that. And then it's been like, well, you can use it as long as it relates to the standards. And you've covered what you're supposed to cover in Eureka or in the language arts. And then if you got something that's along with the standards, the DPI, you can do that. And I'm just going to ask that we say whatever we're going to say tonight, that we're going to allow, and that is communicated to the principals and to the teachers so that the teacher is not getting beat up from using something that's not in Eureka Math. Well, yeah, well, you could use the Apex, but I'm saying if there's other stuff, what can we use, what can we not use, to where there's just a clear understanding of what's acceptable.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Craig. So we do provide teachers with that supplemental list that CNI has done the work to make sure the alignment. So principals are addressing teachers most of the time because you're using something not on that provided list. Y'all want to speak to that?
So yes, so for example, there's lots of DPI resources, tons of them that we encourage them to use because those are resources that DPI created for EOG and different types of things. So just today I had a conversation about how do you utilize those resources to help supplement what you need if a student is struggling with certain things, right? So those resources are shared. We also have the Florida Center of Reading Research, and we have different resources that L has linked in their curriculum that says, here's some great resources. We have Amplify. So we have a number of resources to help make sure that they're using aligned resources. Part of the concern has come off and on is that we still see teachers pay teachers, which is just a teacher sitting down and creating something. And that is something we still run into off and on. And what we say is, we just want to make sure it's aligned to what you're going to encounter when we think about the testing and the standards. And so we do have sort of a bounded autonomy of lists of things that we know align to the curriculum and align to the standards that we need to teach. And so intervention time, we do see a lot of schools pull in different resources that we have shared to say, here's a lot of different things that you can use from Amplify Classworks. The state put out, L Education is listed. Even when we think of the upper grades, they have different resources that are linked through those curriculums to have as additional resources.
If I may, either one of you, we're doing a better job, I think, than ever with that vertical conversation earlier and helping teachers to understand you do have a responsibility to know what's above. And we pre-teach some things there. You might want to address that.
So a lot of times when we talk about instructional gaps, one of the things we do have them look at is, where did that skill start? Just like I think about Dr. Manning, when we always talk about K2, and some of our third graders still lacking skills that they need because of their teaching experience or learning experience, or just being a struggling reader. And so what we have done is, for example, in third grade now, they're implementing and pulling things from second grade and first grade because they may still have some of those gaps. And so they've gotten really good at adapting their off-block time to help adapt and make address those needs that those students have. So constantly looking at the data to see where is that gap coming from so that we can start fill it in. Because we know in K2, if they didn't get all the skills they need, third grade and up is going to be a struggle, right? And so what we're trying to teach teachers, even this week, we have some block training coming the next 2 days so that we can teach teachers, how do you think about those kids that are still struggling and help import some of the resources that we have to help fill those gaps using other grade level resources. Because each teacher actually has access to the K-8 curriculum. So if I have a student, and I just had this conversation with a teacher this morning, she had some students that are further ahead, push them ahead. So how do you enrich them to get further ahead? So if you know what's coming up in what's previous grade levels, we can pull those resources to help support our students.
And I do think that's really the power of being transparent with the data within the schools. A second grade teacher, right, we're looking at first grade data. The ILT is talking about where there's a gap. If I'm having students come out of first grade with letter naming fluency, that's now an issue I have in second grades, right, to address students. But I need to make sure that my first grade teachers understand where the gaps are and what we need to do so we don't continue to repeat that, right? That's when we do look at, it's two-pronged. I gotta address the students who have moved on with the gap, but I need to make sure that the teacher understands what's a better way, or have I addressed the skill?
Got a question, Dr. Emanuel?
Do teachers know, is it out there? Could I access it? Where to get that list of resources? Where would I?
Yeah, Lisa just sent it out.
So Lisa Thoman, our digital teaching and learning facilitator, she mans that. Part of that is also tied to what we call a third-party vendor integration, that we need to make sure that a lot of our online resources are actually vetted and cleared, because some of them collect student data, right? So that's kind of a new loophole. We have to make sure that they go through that yet, and then they end up on a list that Lisa keeps that is then shared with the principals. So the principal in the buildings have that, and the media specialists as well.
So let me make sure I know what you're saying. If I want to know what's a vetted list of resources I can use, I go to my principal.
Yep, we're your media specialists.
Thank you.
Is this, is that list the same across the district?
Yes, it's a list for the entire district.
Okay.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of discussion about how we're using data to inform decisions. I've just got one quick question. Just give me one example of how we're using data and ensure using this data, what we have access to ensure synergy between schools, particularly for those where the same subgroups outperform their counterparts. For example, there's one population at a middle school that showed an overall increase in grade level proficiency of 18%, while that same population at a different middle school displayed a decrease of 7%. So just talk to us about maybe one or two examples of how we're using our available resources to cross train or communicate across schools.
So I'll give an example with our EC. So that was one of the subgroups that we saw certain schools growing, certain schools struggling. And so what we did is literally had a PLC at least once a month to meet with 12 of our schools that had different various needs with our EC population. And so what we looked at is what are some of the schools doing? So those opportunities were for some of the principals share what was going really well, which subgroups it was, because just if you think about EC, one school we noticed it was actually speech students that weren't doing well. So that meant we had to think about that differently than if we think of a self-contained class and a student not doing well. So we had that group really dig in and think about what is going on with that group and which group of students. Is it a certain grade level? Is it a certain subgroup of that group? Is it males? Is it females? Even one school notified us that they noticed none of these students were coming to tutoring. So they had a whole team get together to call all of those parents to talk about how do you attend tutoring, because that subgroup was not attending. And so there's a lot of intentional discussions through that piece, but we also have all of our schools and we at the district do a comprehensive needs assessment, which really means we look at all data sources. So we look at EOG, EOC, subgroup data, teacher working condition, teacher vacancies, the teacher report card, which has a lot of different things on it. We look at, and I'm trying to remember what my other list, K2 data. We look at FAMS, FAMD, all the different data sources to really look at where are the gaps. Because sometimes just looking at a subgroup at a school like you brought up might not be about the students. It might be about a lack of a teacher or any of those types of things. So to determine what created that gap. So the discussion isn't quite so much that necessarily this school needs to go to that other school, because there may be a different issue that's underlying. And I know that was some of the discussion we had before about why is a certain group not doing well. So those are the discussions we have with individual principals. We actually met with each individual principal individually to talk about their particular data and what are they going to do about those subgroups, because we know each school is very different and what factors created that gap. And so that has been very intentional. It's the same way we do our district improvement team. So we share that data once it comes out, once a year. We do a whole new comprehensive needs assessment, look at 3 or 4 year trends, because sometimes you have a year that you dip or a year you go up, and we know that happens, but why is that happening? And so it's usually not a one item answer. So there's sometimes multiple factors that we have to consider. Attendance of a teacher. Is the student's attendance an issue there? Because we had one school, I think that one of the schools you mentioned actually has an attendance issue. And so we got an attendance specialist because we knew that was a gap. And that was creating some of the information that we saw.
So I know there was a comprehensive needs assessment completed back in the spring. Is that something that's typically shared out among stakeholders, and who do those stakeholders include?
We did not receive the comprehensive needs assessment back, but the district one. And usually that is something for a school improvement team to do individually in their building, is to unpack that. It is not a document that gets shared out in the public. It's for them to digest, because as they will tell you, a CNA is a snapshot of a couple days. And so that allows that school improvement team or district improvement team to unpack what's in that plan or in that document to see what are other factors that the team may have not seen in those couple days.
So we
But-
haven't received the results from the
No, we have not.
needs assessment. Okay.
No. No.
And DPI conducted that, and
Mhm.
so we're waiting on them.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
So I do want to point out to one of your questions earlier, Ms. Terry. So you did link the alignment and the
Yes,
standards.
so
you can
just
go.
because it is many, many pages of alignment documents, and Mr. Terry and all of the team will have all the PowerPoint, I have linked the alignment for Eureka and L and the pacing for social studies in the PowerPoint in the title so that you'll be able to access it because it is 156 pages when you look at the alignment piece, and that would have been a lot of papers to bring. So I did bring it so you could see per grade level the alignment.
And that
Thank
was
you.
one of the things you asked for.
Mhm,
So.
mhm.
I think Ms. Crystal Monroe has a question.
Hey, this just goes back to the tutoring and after school that you were saying about some kids missing. I know last year, and I don't know how they're doing it, but I did notice like different schools are doing different things, which is fine. But some are offering transportation like front back after school, whereas like I noticed some aren't. So is that causing a lack of like parents being able to pick the kids up after school? And if so, can we try, to help the parents and try to get like them transportation to get home for the schools that don't have that?
Good evening again. Ms. Crystal, to answer your question, as Dr. Williamson mentioned earlier, the only source of funding we have with our state budget to pay for the after-school tutoring transportation is 069, and it was cut by $1 million. So we, early on in our first principals meeting this year, we addressed that and let our principals know that, as Dr. Carr mentioned, they're either going to have to be creative and do some of those interventions during the day, or fundraise to be able to pay that transportation. But then you do have some schools, like maybe your larger high schools, that have a higher ADM so they get more funding, or they have access to additional funds. So that's why you're seeing a difference in those schools, because that is something that the schools would have to be responsible for now, because we no longer have those funds to allocate.
And are they aware of all this where they can try to
Yes.
make?
We had that
Um,
conversation and have had it since, but we had it at our principals retreat earlier, the first week in August, and we've had it since, and we'll probably continue to have it at every principals meeting as a reminder.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any other questions? Oh, Mr. Phillips?
Hey, Miss Erica, have we noticed that become a popular issue or problem yet? I just feel like that opens up a lot of, not to say an excuse, but some kids that would probably stay after school for tutoring. Now it kind of cripples that situation. Has that become a known problem anywhere yet?
I'm sorry, Mr. Phillips, I didn't hear the first part of your question. Could you repeat the question for me, sir?
The not having the buses or any kind of transportation available. Have we noticed that to be a outlying problem yet that's made itself known? Because I've heard of some outlying circumstances.
So after school tutoring has fluctuated over several years. There have been years where we didn't start tutoring till after January. There's been years where we started tutoring in September. There's been years where we had to wait till December because Title I funding or some funding source hadn't dropped. So it hasn't always been consistent to where you could kind of have that comparison. And as of right now, I think Dr. Carr is going to mention again, they're getting creative with the schools and bringing in those during the day interventionists and tutors. So that's as a resource if they can't come or can't have an after school program, they have that ability to do those small groups during the day. So we haven't really, to answer your question specifically, we haven't really had an opportunity to see if that's an outlier, compare that with our schools and get that data. We can get that as it progresses, but that's been something that has varied widely depending on funding sources throughout the years with after school tutoring specifically.
And on this year, we see a lot more schools hiring during the day tutors to help with that. And what we do see is it's actually providing better services because a lot of our students weren't staying after school. So even though they may have 100 kids on their roster to stay after school, they may have had 20. And so this actually allows us to ensure that we're providing that support to the students because we know they're going to be at school during the day. Mm-hmm.
Now, does that cause any type of child to miss out on any other educational means at school during that day?
No, sir. No, sir. And something I was going to mention, one thing we have noticed is there are a number of different programs that are occurring in some of our schools. The county has a 21st century program. Some schools, when you get into higher grades, they have athletics. So there's a lot of variables that could directly affect after school tutoring. And we have actually seen that at some schools, they have struggled to get the teachers to stay, even though we're paying them their hourly rate. We have struggled to see at some sites that the teachers do not want to stay after school to provide those services.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Dr. Manuel may have a question.
No, it's just a statement. That's a school by school decision, how they want to spend their money to tutor. They may decide, that's a Title I decision. They may decide we're not going to tutor. We're going to use all our resources during the day. So that's why you may see schools doing it differently.
That's correct. And again, it is site-based decision there. And again, you have those other variables of, are athletics playing a part in that? Do they have a 21st century program, which sometimes can be designed around other physical activities and not necessarily academics? So there's a lot of variables there that you could see differences.
Mr. Craig?
I'll just add what Ms. Erica's saying and tell me if I'm wrong. You have to pay for mileage on buses, right, Ms. Erica? Is that a fee we pay for?
That's correct.
So I'm saying that to say you're paying for tutors and you're paying for mileage or whatever on buses, and that mileage will take a big chunk out of any tutoring budget.
And your bus drivers.
And you got to pay your bus drivers. So,
Mhm.
you know, you say you got $15,000 for tutoring, sounds like a lot. It's not. Depending on, if you got two buses running, 3 buses running, depending on how many teachers you got, $20,000 is not a whole lot.
That's correct. And I mean, the reason that we have to charge for that contracted transportation
Right.
is, of course, the yellow school bus can only be used to take kids to school and take them home. Anything outside of that, the district has to charge at a rate to help cover the cost of fuel and wear and tear on the school bus.
That's correct.
So Ms. Freeman asked if I could mention too that Title I, even though Title I can provide the funding to pay for the either during the day or after school tutor, Title I cannot fund the transportation costs. So 069, as I mentioned, is where we have budgeted those funds and we just don't have it this year, and have been upfront with the principals and said that at various meetings they will continue to say, but that is why you'll see, yes, they may be able to provide that one part of the service, but as Mr. Craig indicated, the total cost covers a lot of different areas.
Any other questions? Thank you. So our next item on the agenda is Ms. Amanda Graham, Principals as Instructional Leaders.
Good evening, Chairman Locklear, Superintendent Williamson, and committee members. I'm going to speak to you about our principals as instructional leaders. Principals as instructional leaders using our Leverage Leadership National Model Framework. This is going to include a piece tonight that I'm going to speak to you about where I'm going to focus on them spending the majority of their time inside instruction to improve our student outcomes. Specifically, can we go to, do I do it or you do it? Thank you, Cole. Specifically around what 80% of instructional time looks like versus 20% managerial time. So 80% of a principal's instructional time could look like any of these things. It could look like the principal with their leadership team doing a calibration walk. That means that I am intentionally walking with my leadership team in a specific grade level, a specific content area, or I'm just walking all across campus because I need to see what's going on across my campus in a fast manner. I'm going in and out of a room so that I can debrief with my team doing what we call a calibration walk. I'm spending 80% of my time in another manner having an instructional leadership team meeting. So once a week, I'm meeting, sitting down, having a formal meeting with my leadership team, with my academic coach, with my assistant principal, and we're talking about trends that we've seen on our campus. We're talking about instruction on our campus, and we're intentional about doing that. I can also, as the principal, monitor instruction. I have specific teachers that I want to monitor, I want to coach as the leader of my building. So I'm going to take them under my wing. Let's say I have some of my high school principals that they're more comfortable with monitoring Math 1. So those are the ones that they monitor. I have some of my elementary principals that they're more comfortable monitoring third grade teachers because that's the grade level that they feel most connected with. So whatever it is, that's their grade level that they home in on and they monitor. The instructional calendar, you'll see in a minute, I'm going to show you a sample of one. One way they spend 80% of their time is doing some prep work. And one of those things is about their calendar. Their calendar drives what they do, where they spend their time, how they focus their time, from first thing in the morning when they're monitoring morning arrival, to where I'm going to have that meeting, where I'm going to do that walk, where I'm going to go and monitor instruction today, what that's going to look like, to prepping and preparing my calendar. And they have that expectation for their leadership team as well. I go on to talk to you about prepping and planning with teachers for observations, data decision making from observations. We have a lot of deep data conversations because you talked a lot today about subgroups. We've talked a lot about data. So 80% of my time in instruction is all about our observations and the data that we collect from them. What are we going to do with it? I was in a school today that, you know, we made a whole practice clinic around how we were going to revamp something in her first and second grade classrooms for her skills block, just on how she was going to redo how they were modeling the rollout because it wasn't working on her campus. And it's going to be awesome and amazing. And I'm super excited to see that once they're able to send me their videos from that. It could be around just coaching a teacher, or it could be around their every other week, weekly planning and weekly data meetings. And on the next slide, I'm showing you an example of what a principal's calendar could look like for a week's time. So are there any questions for me about our principals as instructional leaders?
I'll make a comment. The 80-20 is a goal. And so we're flexible on that.
Yeah.
Certainly, we're not walking in demanding 80%. They've got to use common sense. They know
Oh,
what
yeah.
their needs are within that day. But a goal is, and many of them, they're, many
Oh, yeah.
days they're spending 80% of their time.
They
But
are.
we're not saying flat stop, got to, no. That's why the calendar
Yeah.
is so important.
And there's all those different ways that they do that in instruction, and and I'll never forget, as being a principal, I know things happen at the end of the day, but they're more driven to be a part of their instruction now than they've ever been.
Dr. Emanuel?
Thank you. Miss Amanda,
Yes, ma'am.
clarify something for me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm a principal.
Mhm.
I go in Miss Hunt's room and I see some things that I think she needs to improve, so I script, right? I write those notes down.
Yeah.
What is this about a video? And what is the role with the video of the instructional coach? As a principal, do I have to do the fixing of the teacher, Miss Hunt? Do I have to do the video? That's where I'm bogged down. Is the principal having to do the video himself or herself? And what role does the instructional coach play? It
Right.
looks to me like that coach would
Yeah.
be doing that.
Yeah. So really and truly, Dr. Emanuel, it all goes back to accountability. So yes, to your first question, academic coaches are responsible for their own videoing. And for the principals that I coach in my vicinity, I do ask sometimes that they do video and send it to me so that I can give them feedback, just because I cannot be on their campus all the time. And it just depends. It's not all the time that I ask them for it, Dr. Emanuel. If it's once a month, so be it. I would say, Dr. Dallas, have you asked for yours more than once a month? No. So it's about that much, but it's just to give them feedback so that unless I can get it done that day before I leave when I'm in their building, and if I can't, then that's like a deliverable. So if I go in their building and I'm walking with them, we go in Miss Hunt's room or whatever, and I say, this is the action step we come up with for Miss Hunt. Dr. Emanuel, I'm gonna leave you that action step for Miss Hunt. Does she have planning in the next couple of hours? No, she don't have planning until fourth period. Okay, well, how do you feel about recording it and just sending it to me tomorrow or whatever? Okay, that'll be fine, Miss Amanda, I can do that. They don't have a problem with it.
So it's not actually that I talk with her and then she reteaches it that I record a video. So I'm videoing actually talking to Miss Hunt about this is what I think you should
Right.
do. Is that what I'm videoing?
Yes, and and there's another part of that too, Dr. Emanuel. If ever there's a time that the teacher doesn't want to be on it's not about the video. I don't need to see anybody. It's about me coaching the principal. So the monitor can be turned on the principal, or it could be turned up to the ceiling. I just need to hear what the principal's saying so I can ensure that they're giving the right feedback. They're saying and doing the right things to really grow that teacher.
I guess my thoughts are, if that teacher has those issues, wouldn't you? I'm
Fix it in
asking-
the moment. Is
No,
that-
well, that too maybe.
Yeah.
But my thoughts, wouldn't you want to bring the instructional coach in to fix those problems? When does that person, when does that person come into the cycle to help that teacher?
Okay.
I guess that's
a
where
good
I'm
question.
coming from.
Right. So let me circle back then. So every time I go into a building, I meet with the whole team. So the whole team is there when I get there. We sit around the table. We debrief on our last time that I was there. Here's where I was the last time. I pull up our agenda. They know you had these action steps, either the last rooms that I went in. I go around the table. These were the last teachers you're working with. Where are they now? And I always touch base back in those rooms as a quick hit. I take all of them with me. All of them may not go in every room with me, but everybody has a deliverable. My goal now, Dr. Emanuel, is to build capacity so that I want that leader. So if you're the leader of that building, when we step out of that room, I want you to be able to grow that academic coach too, if at all possible. And if not, if that's not your comfort zone, then I want that coach to be able to build Miss Hunt up. So ultimately, everybody around the table, around the circle, has a part in instructional leadership. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if I might add to that, please. So using all these multiple tools, we've been able to increase monitoring in real time, probably 50%. Remember, that was one of our concerns. Those classrooms that we physically spent time in schools, they increased. The ones that we couldn't get to as much needed some help.
Yeah.
This is a way that we've doubled our monitoring of schools and classrooms in real time.
Mr. Craig?
Dr. Emanuel, Amanda, let me go back a couple of things.
Yes, sir.
And some of these new terms I'm not good with.
No, you're fine. It's fine.
Okay. You and Dr. Dallas and Dr. Carr, you're the three that go around to the schools now with the coaching. And
Ms. Scrivens and Dr. Riles as well. There's
Okay.
5 of us now.
there's
Yes,
5
sir.
of you going around and doing this.
Yes, sir.
So and you're going in by yourself usually to a school.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm going to say the first thing is what you said you were asking for. Please make sure that all 5 of y'all are asking for the same thing
Oh, yeah.
at every school. I know you do, but just that
Oh,
I
yeah.
think is very important.
Oh, yeah.
This takes the place of when we had a few years ago, 10 or 12 people going into a
Oh, yeah.
classroom, which the teachers, when they started walking through the door and I complained about it.
Yes, sir.
Cause I just, I just think people get a little antsy or whatever when you got that many adults walking in and then the kids are starting to look up and everything else.
Yeah.
But again, going back to what I said, if y'all are doing the same thing. Now, the other thing 80%. That 80% up there is not the 80% we were getting. The 80% we were getting, and I,
Yes, sir.
principals expected to be in a classroom 80% of the time, period. I'm just saying, be in that classroom physically 80% of the time. That's the way it was coming to me. Now, I'm not going to
Yeah.
speak for other people. That's the way it was coming to, okay, Dr. Emmanuel. Now, that's totally different.
Yeah,
When you add all of that up there,
yeah,
I mean, that's your work day.
yeah,
Doing different things, doing whatever you're doing, that's
Yeah.
part of your work day. So that's a totally different
Yeah.
thing. So I'm gonna go back saying all that to say communication, communication, communication.
Yeah.
As far as from here to us, the principals,
Yeah.
teachers, whoever. I mean, that's to me always needs to be at the top, to make sure everybody is understanding and on the same page.
Yes, sir.
Because when I first heard the 80%, Dr. Williamson will tell you, I told him, there is no way. No, I mean, there's just no way a principal can be in a classroom, and we all know that. I mean, you can go to school tomorrow and have the best intentions. It's 7 o'clock, your whole day is disrupted. And anybody that's ever worked in a school, you know that's what can happen. Yeah, well, I mean, has principals seen this? Has that been showed to them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
This is a principal schedule from last week, this week.
This week? Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
they've seen that.
Yeah.
Now, are they having to put this and fix this each week
Yes.
for their
So
schedule?
everything that's on right here, so every school has a folder that we monitor. And inside that folder, these things are required to be uploaded. And every week you asked about our communication. So every Monday at 4:30, we meet as principal coaches
Mhm.
and we discuss every school, every visit, everything to ensure that we are having the same conversations and doing the same things every Monday.
And I'll add this, Mr. Terry, if I may. You know, when we first started with the curriculums and then we were trying to take off this or add this, you know, what loads on the teacher, that was a conversation for a year or so. So now, to me, it's kind of shifted to the principals. So I would ask that on a regular basis here, and I'm sure you do, but on a regular basis, just sit down and look at each other and say, okay, can we take this away? Dealing with teachers and dealing with administrators, can this be taken away? Can this be adjusted some way? And again, just let's make sure that the same message is going out everywhere to the same, you know, it's the same. We just don't need nothing, no different going to any one school.
Yes, sir.
Chair, if I may, to that point, one of the questions the board asked us when we shared proficiency data was, why this school, why this school, why not this school? Well, this helps us to answer that question because those 5 coaches keeping track in that folder, and we'll pull it and say, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. And so again, it's monitoring to help those principals be and to help those schools. But that was a valid question. Why? And we can show you by the documentation why.
Dr. Emmanuel?
I just want to make one statement. Amanda, you're
Yes,
the
ma'am.
perfect person to do this because you can ask yourself, you've been a principal,
Yes, ma'am.
and you and I have had discussions.
Yes, ma'am.
You can say to yourself when you are out there, they're doing all this, requiring those principals to do this. When is too much, too much?
So that I wanted to go back to what you mentioned a while ago. I don't ever forget where I came from, Dr. Manuel, and you mentioned something about video, and that's the other reason about Monday afternoons at 4:30. We have to differentiate our coaching too. We have to know our principles, and we have to know what I can ask and what they are doing and what when their load is heavy, and we have to know when. Right. Yes, ma'am. And we know, and we have to know when we have to listen, and when we have to push, or when we have to pull, or when we have to just be there to carry. And so yes, ma'am. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Ms. Graham, so Dr. Williamson mentioned that there may have been a different level of support in terms of direct contact with teachers. And Mr. Craig also made an interesting statement that years ago, I guess with observations, there would be a number of people that would come into your classroom. but now maybe this is, instead of having a large number of people, they're being broken up in different segments. On the high end, how many people would you say are observing teachers
Right.
on the high end, and at what frequency?
The largest team that I have where there are two APs, one coach, two APs, is a 5-man team, 5 in a room.
Okay, so that's 5 individuals. Are
Mhm.
there other individuals maybe going in 1 or 2 at a time at different points?
Not that I'm aware of, Chairman Lock, not, from, can
I'm
you
just
give me an
trying to get a-
example, like,
I'm just trying to.
other than when I'm there with the team, yes. Now, yes, the leadership team as a whole would go on those walks, and then the leadership team would break apart because an AP is assigned specific teachers to monitor, coaches are assigned specific teachers to monitor individual, so they would go individually to monitor their teachers. But the group would never be as big as it is when I'm in.
So I guess my better question may be, if I'm a teacher that's on the high end of receiving this type of support,
Okay.
how often and how many people would be coming into my classroom observing me?
Okay. So if you're on the high end, you would be observed every week. And at most, if I'm coming to see you every week, then I would come on one particular day. Then I would meet with you that same day to debrief with you. My goal would be to come follow up with you again. If I could make all this happen, let's say on a Tuesday, I would follow up with you again before the end of the week to see if you were able to put that action step or that feedback into play by the end of the week. If not, it would be by that Monday. So it could be twice in that week. And then if I came on your campus in that same week, the most would be 3 times.
So 3 times, and that's just from you?
No.
Okay.
No. From me, the most that you would see me on your campus is twice a month. That's the most I can get to my 15 schools. I can get to them every other week, and I have one right now that I can get to every week.
Okay. I'm just trying to conceptualize, being a teacher and who and how often somebody would be coming to observe me, whether it's
Yeah.
an AP, a coach, somebody from your team, someone else. Is that
The
unreasonable?
most you're going to see me on your campus, the most you would see me on the high end is twice a month. The most.
Do we have anybody that can answer that question outside of just what you can provide from your
then
area?
I'm thinking in a high need school, a high touch school, to where maybe I'm a small staff and I have a lot of BTs or high needs teachers. Then you might see your principal or your coach twice a week. So if you see me twice a month and your principal twice a week, you might see somebody
And
4 to
let-
5 times.
Right, and so let me answer that, because that's still a principal's duty to do that, what we've done by having academic coaches and AP trained, but that's still, as an instructional leader, the principal make a decision. Do I need to go in this teacher classroom every week, this one every 2 weeks? That's still their responsibility as instructional leaders.
Mr. Craig?
When you mentioned like there might be 5 people coming in when you were there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were coming in, but the rest of the people that are coming in, are they all people that's on that campus? They work at that campus?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
I'm
that's
the only
You're
outsider.
the only outsider.
Yeah.
And that's the difference of what we did a couple of years ago.
Right. The
You had-
difference was we may all
You
go.
might all, it might be somebody from Raleigh or
Yeah.
wherever.
Mhm.
And
Yes, sir.
now it's just you as an outsider and
Yeah.
everybody else. Now, the principal still has to do the formative, all the observations.
Yes, sir.
So when we get into, you got, I don't know if it's still 3 observations or 4,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
That's the principal going in doing the observations. Now, when you talk about going to a school twice a month,
Mm-hmm.
are you necessarily going to see the same teacher? Could be or could not be.
It could or could not be. It depends on the need.
And then-
It depends on the need.
So there are a lot of variations.
My hope is
Yeah.
that I can see multiple ones.
Mhm.
It depends on if things have been fixed or not. And
So there are a lot of variations.
Yes,
Again,
sir.
it can be from school to school,
Yeah.
teacher to teacher.
I would like to speak about that NESIS for like 30 seconds though. Under this model, Mr. Craig, our principals are in and out of classrooms so much that NESIS is the easiest it's ever been as a principal,
Mhm.
hands down, because you already know, because you are in those rooms that much.
Well, you go in and out when people don't know you're coming, not being ugly about it.
Yeah.
You find out what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to go in there and sit down for
Oh, yeah.
45 minutes.
This may not be a question for you, Ms. Graham, but since we're discussing principals as instructional leaders, I'm wondering if we unilaterally decided to, I'm wondering how the decision was made to utilize Title I funds for this year. Was that made in collaboration with principals, or was that a decision that was kind of top down from the district?
Good evening, Chairman Locklear, Superintendent Dr. Williamson, and committee members. Several years ago, if you recall, we received ESSER funding. Part of the ESSER funding that we received was to sustain what we put in place. During that time, there was an instructional framework that was created that was including the assistant principal as well as the academic coach. When we went into the couple of years into ESSER, we realized that the goal was to sustain academic coaches. With that being said, we started having conversations with principals 2 previous years ago. We actually went into the building, had sit-down conversations with them. Each of them were asked, each person was asked, what is the benefit of your academic coach? Is the academic coach helping to support you? Does that academic coach meet a need within your building? As a result of that, we also talked with the principals in terms of that. Would it be a district decision, or would it be in terms of the funding? Would it come out of the district set aside, or would it come out of the school set aside? When we actually looked at the variables, we decided to go with the school set aside because it would be less money for everyone involved. So the principals did have input. I personally will verify that each principal did have input during that time. If they did not, I asked them to speak with me personally, and I would have relayed that message to Dr. Williamson. To date, I have not had a principal say to me that they did not want their academic coach. As a matter of fact, I have a concern funding academic coaches as well if they are not doing the work that they need to be doing. I feel that way with any position that we fund through Title I, whether that be teacher assistant, whether that be a technology assistant, whether that be a teacher in general. So yes, that should be a need within their building. We have actually set up all the site visits for this first semester. We're actually going into each and every school. We've been doing that work for the past 2 years. We'll continue this year. And we're actually having conversations with principals this year. How is everyone meeting the need of your of your budget? It is needs driven. It should always be needs driven. And I'll be the first to say that it will always continue under my leadership to be needs driven. If the need is not there, then we should be having a conversation.
Thank you, thank you, Ms. Jennifer. I just got one quick follow-up. Who is hiring and supervising academic coaches?
That would fall under Dr. Carr's leadership.
Okay.
So the principals are doing all the evaluations on the academic coaches. The recent coaches we've hired, we've worked with the principals. So some of them have been in interviews, some of them have been part of the discussion so that we can fill those vacancies.
Okay, so who supervises academic coaches?
I supervise the training, but the principals actually, as far as evaluation and everything on a day-to-day basis, oversee the academic coaches.
Does a principal have a means of providing feedback for their academic coach in terms of how that individual is a fit, whether or not that individual is a fit at that school.
So they do the same evaluations as anybody else on their, so they have the academic coach evaluation that they do for HR, and then they have to make the decision every year if something's not working. So just like any other employee, they have to do the same processes.
So you would say that they have a dotted reporting line to you and a dotted reporting line to the principal?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
The last item on our agenda for this evening is district improvement, Dr. Carr and Dr. Dallas.
So at the last district improvement, at the last board meeting, we shared the district improvement plan. And so we were asked to bring back the feedback that has been shared through the survey. At this time, we only have 2 pieces of feedback. And these were literally the 2 pieces. One was sounds great, and the other one was a concern about students being taught by substitute teachers. And so that's the only feedback we've received from the community. It is open, the survey is open for 3 more days. It is posted on Facebook. It's posted on our district website. It's posted on Twitter. So it is available everywhere for anybody to provide us feedback. And we will take this feedback and any other feedback back to the district improvement team when we meet the first Monday in November to make any final revisions before we bring it for board approval in November.
Yeah, I say
Dr.
something.
Emanuel?
I suggest, sounds great. I mean, it's a good plan,
Mhm.
but I would like to make sure that the school's plans reflect those initiatives by the district once it all is approved. They may have to adjust some of their plans. That would be my suggestion, because looking at the school plans, there
Mhm.
were some that didn't totally reflect what the district was doing. So that might be just minor adjustments and some wording and things of that nature, but they should be a mirror of what the district's doing, I think.
Mhm. So in those, when you look at the indicators and our indicators of the district and school plan, they align with the state board objectives. So that is the major alignment. And then each school does have to look at their individual data because they may have some things in place that another school does not yet. And so they will not have the same action. So if a school is really good at having district or school improvement meetings every month, that may not be on their plan anywhere, because once it's embedded, what the state wants is us to take that off and add new actions to it. So it varies from school to school based on their individual needs. And there are the commonalities come through the indicators, but we can definitely review that language, Dr. Manuel.
Any other questions? Ms. Christie?
I want to know that in our last board meeting, when you went over this plan and you talked about the low performing district plans, you stated that Dr. Williamson decided
Right.
to the local board, the principal be retained in the current position.
Mhm.
However, your wording says recommended. So is it?
No, so that is the language in the law is recommend. Those are the 3 recommendations that we can choose.
But you said Dr. Williamson decided.
Yes, because he has to determine which one happens out of those 3.
So is he deciding for the local board or is he recommending to the local board?
It's the superintendent's determination what happens when it comes to those principles.
Any other questions? I have one. Again, I'm just wondering, how did the SACE report, the State Advisory Council on Indian Education, inform the district improvement plan?
So we look at all data sources. So part of the comprehensive needs assessment, we look at, and the same data that is in the SACE's report is in the report that Miss Cindy gives us as far as the data sources. We compared it to make sure, but it includes the EOG, EOCs, graduation rate, all of that. So we look at all those broken down by subgroups. So we have a spreadsheet for the last 3 or 4 years, and Cindy was just updating for us to take it to the next November meeting, the most recent data. It pulls all the teacher working conditions, all of that information so that we can make decisions to see, is it one subgroup that is having a certain concern, or do we see the consistent practice across those subgroups so that we know how to put those things in place?
One of the things that I noticed is the recommendations made by SACE to address the American Indian student population in terms of differentiation of instruction. And I'm wondering how that aligns with our current practice of using scripts and some of the prescribed methods that we're employing.
So are you talking about the curriculums or what are you speaking to?
In general. So the SACE report really outlines, and it can be used as a playbook to address, quite frankly, your largest subgroup in the district. And I'm wondering how their recommended approaches align with our current practice of using scripts and very prescribed pedagogy.
So all of our curriculums, and this is a misconception, is not meant to be a script. And so one of the things there are suggested questions, but just like we have observed in many of our schools, now that they're more comfortable with the curriculum, they're able to take that curriculum, adopt it based on those students' needs and make those differentiations, because we want the teacher to make it their own. So take that information in the curriculum and think about your students' needs. So Mr. Terry, what we want to make sure is that if I know my population needs a certain thing in my classroom, that I adapt that part of the curriculum, ask a different type of question, pose it the way I need to, but I have to know my students' data. So we have to have our teachers, and that's part of what we're working through with helping teachers making the curriculum more of their own, to say, if my students have this particular need, what do I need to add based on those particular needs? Because it can't be that I go into each classroom and it be exactly the same. Yes, the content and the standards the same, but I may have to approach it a little different based on those particular students' need in my classroom.
And I've just got one more question. Does our current structure, purpose, and work of school improvement teams mirror the current structure, purpose, and work of the district improvement teams? And how are they similar or different? And also,
Yes.
how does the MTSS data influence our school and district improvement practices overall?
So both our district team and our school improvement teams have to have 2 meetings a month. So one of them is the full team. So the school has a full team meeting and the district has a full team meeting once a month. For us, our other meeting is our cabinet meeting, because each school system can decide what that second meeting will be. So for us, it's our cabinet to discuss in smaller teams things that we may need to take to the district, or just particular issues that the cabinet needs to solve. The same thing when we think of a school. They have a smaller team that is their MTSS team that meet once a month as their second meeting for school improvement. So as they're making decisions or problem solving for their school based on the students' data every month, they can make adjustments. And so with both of those meetings, what we do is review what indicators or actions are in our plan and make adjustments based on that. So if we see something we've put in the plan is not working or is not effective, it is our opportunity in that meeting to say, what do we need to do differently, or what do we need to add? Or why is it causing something not to happen? So both of those teams make a lot of decisions based on data every month so that they can make those changes necessarily and not wait till the end of the year, which is what traditionally has happened with district and school improvement plans.
Thank you.
I just want to add in with the MTSS. So one of the main principles around MTSS is that you make data informed decisions, and that's rooted in problem solving teams. So an MTSS team, a school improvement team, a district improvement team, a cabinet, it's all functioning around problem solving. So with MTSS, when we use that as a problem solving team, whether it's the school, whether it's a grade level, whether we convene a small group, we're looking for the root cause of a problem. Right? When we start looking at data, whether it's K2 data and we focus in on second grade, we have to identify the root cause. We do not just blanket, this is a problem, let's go fix it. We find the root cause so that we can determine how to address it. Sometimes that's layering supports. That's what MTSS is all about, trying to define what layers of support are for students, right? How do we make sure that they're getting what they need when they need it based on what they need and when? Okay, so that's kind of the premise of all of that is school improvement. That's where MTSS was grounded in, was around school improvement. And it's really about addressing all the needs of a child, not just academic, social, emotional, and behavior, by problem solving and identifying layers of support. So when we find a kid is not progressing, we can layer in a support. If that's not working, we need to layer another support.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question, I have a comment. Mr. Terry, Superintendent, at some point in time, can we have a brief presentation about MTSS? Because
Yeah.
I know it's an important part, and I don't remember us having one. I don't remember. Maybe we did, and I just don't remember it. But I think we need an update on that aspect too. And also, Mr. Superintendent, about health, like our nurses or something about going on with the health, because there are some, I think, some diseases that are popping up. Just an update, maybe in the health services. If y'all, Mr. Terry, you and Mr. Superintendent, whatever.
It's a great idea because MTSS is embedded in all of our work,
Yeah.
right? So great idea.
Thank you, Dr. Emmanuel. Any other questions or comments? Let me just say congratulations to Dr. Williamson, the North Carolina Superintendent of the Year. And we would be remiss if we left this meeting without congratulating him. Please, everyone, let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I will.
If there's nothing else for the good of the order, yep, Mr. Henry.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second, approved by acclamation. Thank you.